Welcome to Deep Look, Ultiworld's weekly radio show about the current state of Ultimate. I'm the host and the editor of Ultiworld, Charlie Eisenhood. Joining me, Ultiworld senior editor Keith Raynor. And you know what? It's Keith. NCAA March Madness starts today. And you know what that means?
It is.
Horns down, baby.
Horns down.
Horns down.
Look, I already put money on Virginia Tech in the first round for the men's March Madness.
I haven't really put my bets in yet. The only thing I have, DraftKings has $50 max bet on Gonzaga to win.
Oh, I definitely max betted that.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
It's free. It's basically a free $50.
Yes. So starting that off, get the bankroll going. And I got to sit down like after this show and start to plan out the bets. Because I mean, when do the games start? Like one?
They're gonna start while we're recording, Charlie.
Wow.
I'm sorry to tell you.
Wow. I gotta get the iPad up. I'm gonna start looking off the screen, It
is 11:15 right now, and games start at like 12.
Wow. Well, I don't know if I'm gonna get my bets down for this first round, but we will see.
It's the first game is a team I love, so I'm big Colorado State rider right now.
Horns down, Keith. I think we're gonna get fined by USA Ultimate for throwing the taunt on the program here.
We probably by the NCAA. I mean, the SWAT teams may be on their way.
They're gonna take us out. We're just gonna go dark in the middle of the show. So if you're not on Twitter, you might be like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Bama Sex. Okay, Bama Sex, a once upon a time relevant Twitter account in Ultimate Frisbee, randomly tweeted out a screenshot of what was purportedly an email from USA Ultimate to Carleton Cut, saying that they were going to be fined $300 for making a horns down gesture at the camera at Smoky Mountain Invite. And Bama Sex with caption was, "Does this mean we're a real sport now?" or ... #legitimacy. And despite the fact that there were multiple pieces of evidence that suggested that this was fake, people just went after it, Keith. And I mean, people were raining down on USAU.
Just the dunks started coming.
Garbage organization. You're such trash. I can't believe. People are like, how do I Venmo cut money to pay this fine? Like, how could USAU do? I mean, it was hook, line, and sinker, Keith. And here's the beautiful part about this, and this is exclusive first news here on Deep Look. Apparently, Cut captains got an email that must have looked like it had come from USA Ultimate or something. They got trolled by somebody. Now, we don't actually know who did the trolling.
Oh, I have an idea.
Who's your guess?
Yeah, this came straight from our Discord. By the way, if you're not in the Discord, you're missing out. I mean, the Discord detectives had sleuthed this out right away. They've got great theories. And this is a very plausible theory to me. This is coming from Carleton Chop, the D3 men's team. Well-known pranksters.
But not the pranksters.
I have a feeling they're behind this.
Not the pranksters. They're probably going to
not the pranksters. Although, who knows? The pranksters could be in on it too.
Maybe that's all one team, and we just don't know. But so Carleton captains got this email, and it must have passed it along somehow, through the grapevine. It ends up in the Chain Lightning like group chat, and then it gets picked up by TJ Martin, who tweets it out on the Bama Sex account. And then everybody takes it as gospel. And of course it's fake. I like reach out to USAU. I'm like, this looks fake. This is fake, right? And Ben Feng's like, I've never seen this. I don't know what this is. I'm like, okay, it was definitely fake. So then, Bama Sex is leaving the tweet up. I mean, it was a bunch of fun though. At the end of the day, Keith. I mean,
yes.
Lisa P comes out and tweets, "What's next? USAU fining me for having a fat and juicy ass?" And then Julia Lee, who is the finance director at USA Ultimate, replies to the Ultiworld tweet about this and says, "Fine them. I'd pay them to do that." So Julia is not a fan of the UT program. So that was a little 15 minutes of fun. But you know what? If you were one of those people who were on Twitter coming in and dunking on USAU, get a hold of yourself. Get a hold of yourself. You should be ashamed. There were some smart people in there saying stupid stuff on Twitter about this.
Yeah, you're the reason the fabric of democracy is coming apart because of Russian disinformation. Because you fall for everything you read online.
How many times do we have to do
little social media literacy?
How many times do we have to do this in Ultimate Twitter? Come on, people.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, this is obviously like no big deal. It's like a pretty silly thing. That
no, this
really
isn't like
in the grand scheme.
This isn't like the bus incident.
The Greyhound incident. I mean, come on, man. But it's similar like fundamentals. Just like taking random tweets as the truth without any like thought as to whether they're true or not. Why would USAU find? It's like so stupid. And if you watch the clip, it's like 2 seconds of them kind of just like milling around in the end zone doing the horns down.
And they're down like 5 goals. Like,
you know what? Shame on Carleton too for doing a horns down taunt, scoring downwind in a game which you're down like 4 breaks.
Yeah, that's not.
Come on.
That's pretty lame. I'm not gonna lie.
It's so bad. Everyone takes the L here, except I think Lisa P and probably Julia Lee.
And Texas. Although shout out to Cut for Texas replied about how do you talk trash to Carleton basically. And Carleton tweeted out a link to a YouTube clip from Whiplash where their football team is skewered in the film Whiplash, which is also pretty funny. Good humor.
Good times. Bamasek's getting unfollows and stuff. It's a tough look for the Twitter.
You just had to take the L. Not taking the L. Not enough people took the L's that they rightfully earned this time around.
Need to see some more L's next time. All right, well, let's talk about some actual Frisbee stuff. The Western Ultimate League kicked off this weekend, Keith, and it was certainly an interesting weekend. Seattle comes away with the clean sheet, 1-0. They get a win over Arizona. Arizona goes 2-1, playing in their 3 home games, and Utah goes 1-1. San Francisco goes 0-2. So as the dust settles, Keith, what are your takeaways from this first weekend of play?
I gotta say that I think that my initial read that these teams are all going to be very close together, and no team is going to be so good that they're unbeatable, and no team is going to be so bad that they can't win. That we could see the last place team have a win over the best team at some point. Like, I think that's still within the cards. Now, part of that's because you got a small table. There's just not that far to get. But I think that all the teams are pretty close together, even with the scores coming out the way that they were. Seattle with that just absolute explosion of a game with Arizona. I don't know how they just blew away whatever the total would have been. I think would they end up with 28 goals or something like that? Like
26-18 final. 26.
That's the highest any 2 teams had scored in a game. I think prior to that was like 28. So they almost matched that by themselves.
I mean,
which is pretty wild.
Was just like pure shootout. Like
every time I look away from the screen, I'd look back and somebody's in the end zone. I don't even know what was happening.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, Arizona had no answers for the handler motion from Seattle. I mean, Seattle just like go right up the open side, bam, 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 strike cuts and score every time.
And Arizona plays fast. They have a couple of key throwers who key the offense, and they had a tough game against the Seattle defense. And I think that the early inefficiencies from their offense. I think their 2 primary throwers had like 11 turnovers between the 2 of them. So that's just not going to get it done. Not their best effort, but they played pretty well. They came out, they kind of smacked Utah around in the first quarter of the season opener of the franchise opener, the league opener. I don't even know what you call the first game ever.
All of the above.
But so they smack around in the first quarter, then they give up the whole lead basically in the second quarter, and then they run away from the game in the second half. So they came out excited, playing in front of the home crowd, and there was a lot of big plays, a lot of excitement this weekend.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting. I mean, certainly Arizona is a great team to watch play. The combination of, Ari Nelson throwing darts and blades and all kinds of crazy stuff, Kody Lippincott, who's going to be joining us here on the program in just a little bit, just roofing people in the deep space. Megan Maxfield getting crazy layout Ds. Like they play an explosive, exciting style of Ultimate. It was funny, like in the Seattle game, trying to like build the highlight package for the end of the game. It's like 85% Arizona plays, even though Seattle won by 8. But Seattle is just like a little bit more of like kind of a methodical style of Ultimate, which was very effective. I'll be curious to see how Seattle does later this season. It does feel like they have to move to the top of the power rankings, right, Keith? Given what we've seen.
I agree with that. I mean, Arizona ostensibly had the best weekend outside of Seattle, and Seattle thumped them. So I don't see how we can keep Seattle, especially when we were pretty high on Seattle. I mean, they were my preseason pick to win this thing. So I was pretty high on them. Our power rankings are pretty high on them. Like, I don't see a reason to not. Again, I do want to caution people to not overreact to a small sample size, which I think some people did with the Winter Cup, and maybe still do, considering that there's some teams that haven't played yet. We're still, for most of these teams, like Seattle's played 3 games total if you count the Winter Cup. Like, there's just not a lot of information to go on, and we don't know much about their opposition. The lack of data for every team like makes the data less valuable, if you know what I mean. Like, it compounds. So I think people are going to overreact, but I expect to see some more mixed results throughout the season, depending on also who is there. I'm sure we're going to talk some about San Francisco. 0-2, high expectations again for this team, but they're missing some key players. Like, could they be a much better team down the road and be more like the team that we projected them to be at the beginning of the season? That's very possible.
I mean, I think they're going to get better, but Keith, the basis that they're playing at right now is not good. I mean, they did not look good at all. Ton of turnovers, not a lot of offensive cohesion. Played okay defense, but not good enough, and like they just couldn't make up for the offensive mistakes. Just turnover. I mean, they made some big plays. They have some good players out there for sure. Shayla Harris, Han Chen, but they were by far the worst team this weekend, and it wasn't just in the 0-2 record. I mean, they're in a bad spot now. I mean, they probably have to win at least 3 of their next 4 games this season. They may need to win all 4 given point diff. I don't have a lot of high hopes for this team. They really don't look very sharp, and it's surprising because there's lots of talent in the Bay Area.
I do think they'll benefit from reinforcements and take some of that workload off of Han Chen, who played a lot of points. I had to lead the weekend in points per game, I imagine, playing 16 and 15 across their 2 games, but had a ton of turnovers. 10 throwaways, I think, for Han Chen on the weekend. I would have had her as a preseason pick. She might have been my MVP pick. So disappointed by that, but I also think she will progress to the mean, as some people say. And Shayla Harris is also one of the top players on this team and had a tough weekend. So I think that their top players will be better, especially when they have a little bit more to the roster. But I was also a bit surprised by their lack of defensive teeth. It just felt like they had trouble getting the disc back after they gave it away. A lot of the turnovers that they were getting felt a little bit unforced error. So I think there's definitely work for this Falcons team to do. And I do think while I've said again, don't be concerned about small sample size. People were talking about, they were disappointing at Winter Cup. They lost to Utah by 1. They easily could have flipped their results and been 2-0 with a win over Utah. People would have been like, oh, San Francisco's so good. Instead, they lose that game to Utah. They go 1-1 at Winter Cup. That lowers expectations. I think that this team is better than what we've seen thus far, but it is a short season.
Yeah,
two losses and a 6-game slate puts you in a real hole to start. So you're right; they're going to have to be much better throughout the rest of the season.
Yeah, interesting. Utah. I feel like they're still not totally adjusted to not having Matt Keston out there. It looks like they could use a center handler to kind of control the offense. I mean, Arizona just ran kind of like a loose zone against them, and they really struggled to move the disc offensively against it. I think Utah can be better. In fact, I can't remember if Utah and Arizona play again. If Arizona's traveling up to Salt Lake for the like multi-day weekend, we can look that up. But I feel like I favor Utah in a rematch against Arizona, just given the fact that there's such a good amount of buy-in. I mean, this is one other point I want to make. Utah, Arizona, we're seeing the buy-in from the full community, and it makes sense. These are smaller scenes that haven't had the same kind of like national recognition and don't have a big local club team or club scene where there's like, going to nationals every year. Compare that to San Francisco. You have a lot of top players in San Francisco on Fury that are not playing for the Falcons. And we've seen this same dynamic in the AUDL could this be a problem for the Falcons when you have like a large group of players from a lot of different club teams coming together who all play in different styles and formats and have different levels of focus compared to the intense focus that you're seeing from these programs that are kind of being started, right? That don't have this club base in the same way. I think that's something to keep an eye on over the rest of the season.
I'm not even sure if I would say that it's about where people are coming from. I mean, you look at Arizona, they're spread out across a bunch of different club teams, and not even people from different states. Yeah. But that part of it, I think, is that it's possible for those players. Like, this is one of their best shots to play elite ultimate and show everybody what they can do. And I can imagine, if you're Jayla Harris, like, this isn't the crux of your season. This isn't going to define how your year of ultimate goes. If you're Michelle McGee or Kobe Wynn, like, there are other things I think that's probably on their mind. And that's a tough thing to reshape right away. I mean, we've seen the same effect in other semi-pro leagues where, the amount of your ultimate focus that goes into the specific team is an important calibrator for how good you're going to be. So Arizona seems to have really bought in. It also helps to probably play all your games at home in front of your fans. It probably helps make you really feel like you got to bring it. And I think we saw that effect. I was bringing up the topic of, will the homestand be helpful or harmful? Will it be tough to play 3 games in 3 days, or will it be beneficial to get to build up some rhythm and get some extra reps, but be at home in front of fans for 3 consecutive games? I think it really helped.
What'd you think of the product overall, Keith?
I think it's exciting. We had Bryce Merrill on the show a couple weeks ago, and he was very high on this Western Ultimate League rule set. And I think that there's something to be said for that. 7-second stall count, pace of play felt nice and brisk, which was good. We didn't have a lot of stoppages that felt like they really bogged the game down. Not a ton. It didn't feel like a ton of time between points. It was great to have all the games on a live stream. I don't want to toot our own horn. I think we've got a great production. So if that part goes down, will that change how we see the overall presentation? Maybe. I thought the level of play was pretty high, but still there's plenty of drama. So I think the biggest thing rules wise, like the biggest one to me, is how you handle the end of quarters. Like, how do you interact ultimate with the time setting? What do you think of the way that they have it set up now, where you get to finish out the possession in the first 3 quarters?
It's actually all 4 quarters.
Or all 4 quarters, excuse me. That was conflated with the PUL.
PUL does buzzer at the end of the
fourth quarter buzzer beater.
I think it's just fine. I think it works just fine. I understand that the AUDL is probably not going to switch to this, but I think I prefer it to chuck it up at the buzzer.
I think so too.
Like, yes, you get some like big crazy catches and stuff in those situations, but there's a beautiful tension of that final possession that you lose if it's just like huck and hope. And so I actually really like it. And aside from some calls really taking too long to resolve, it felt a little clubbish in that sense. The pace of play is just so much better. I'm not going to name this person, but I was talking to a prominent Western Ultimate League player who also plays high level in club. And they said that club is unwatchable to them at this point. And, I haven't really heard that so often from players. And, it's something that we've talked about here on the show. To me, the significant progress that is being made in terms of the watchability and the flow of the game in the semi-pro leagues is something that needs to be recognized by USAU Rules Committee folks. It is the product of the club ultimate product is suffering because of the rule set at this point. It's actively suffering. There are a lot of things that are happening in the semi-pro leagues. And, there's a spectrum of options. You have some things that are more aggressive, like in the AUDL and in terms of both timing, obviously referees, but like substitutions and just reducing the time between points. There are simple things that we can do in Club Ultimate to make it a better product. And maybe we're just going to accept that that's never going to happen. But I think that if that's the case, then USAU needs to be ready to let these leagues take over the elite side of kind of the spectator side of the sport. And I haven't seen any sense that they are planning to do that or that they really want to do that, given the sort of attitude that has been sort of predominant in the way that they interact with these leagues over the last, basically decade at this point. But the club game is going to start getting left behind when it comes to watchability. And that's a real problem, I think, if you want that to remain kind of the pinnacle of the sport.
I don't disagree, and we'll see if that's one of those things. It feels like if USAU had a better relationship with these leagues, might have been a smoother transition. Now, when you have a more adversarial relationship, you like kind of don't want to move in the direction that the other leagues are going.
Is it adversarial?
It's tricky for them.
It's just like there's nothing.
Yeah, it was adversarial at one point. It felt like they were really like staunchly anti-AUDL in particular, but now it's a little more.
MLU brought it upon themselves because they were actively adversarial.
And now I feel like it's a little more like we kind of pretend they don't exist,
right? Which
is still a problem. But I will say I agree with you that I think I like this as the best way to end quarters. And I think there's, some people are like, well, how do you transition a time game into like this untimed moment? Well, you do it in football, in overtime in college football. I think that's super dramatic. You have a down when you get to that last down, like that's an incredibly dramatic play, even if there's no time. Or in soccer, when you get down to the last moments and it's like a team is making a push and the whistle's going to blow. Like we know that we've gotten to the end of the time and the ref's going to blow the whistle as soon as this push dies out. So, the first time they take a shot and they miss it or they lose possession, there's a lot of pressure and tension in those moments. And I think the Western Ultimate League rule set is capturing that right now in a way that makes a lot of sense.
And we haven't had an opportunity to see it play out at the end of the fourth quarter where like the team down one has the disc with a chance to tie and force overtime. And that will happen eventually. And it will be very exciting when it does. You don't need zeros on the clock to make that an interesting and tension-filled moment. I think the reason that it can work is that there's no real need to have the game just simply end at zeros in order to still have that buildup. Now, I'll also say this. Teams did a bad job this weekend across the board of recognizing that it was 3 seconds left on the clock and that they absolutely have to hold the disc until zeros. Even if they then proceed to turn it over, at least the other team doesn't then get an opportunity with possession. I mean, I saw multiple turnovers within the last 5 to 10 seconds of quarters that then gave the other team the disc with a chance to go down and score. Those are like unacceptable blunders that, I think there's just like a lack of familiarity at this point with kind of the importance. But that is the key end of quarter situation in the Western Ultimate League. It's not put yourself in a position to throw the huck to the end zone. It's hold the disc until zero so that you are guaranteed to get the last possession.
And we saw it right off the bat. I mean, the first quarter of the first game, Utah has the disc and they turn it over with like literally a second left on the clock to Arizona, and Arizona goes down and scores. And I think that made the lead 7-3. Like that was a pretty significant score. I actually think Utah had a couple of those come up, and that is an unfamiliarity. I heard from folks on the ground, and maybe you could speak to this, that there's also a lot of stall calls for people who weren't used to the 7 seconds that. Were kind of let go, the players kind of understanding a little bit like, a college fall tournament where players are traveling and you're like, oh, okay, we get it. They're rookies. They don't really know the rules.
I mean, it's hard to override the ingrained rules in your mind. Even if you know
especially an internal clock. Like it's, in the AUDL, somebody else is counting it out for you. So it's a little bit different. I do think players are going to get better about this over the course of the year, but it's only 6 games. And, for Arizona, they play 3 more games in 7 more weeks or whatnot. So it's not a lot of time to like really build up a lot of familiarity, although we'll see what the practice levels are like for these teams too.
More to come. Games continue all the rest of these next 8 weeks. And 2 more of these homestand type setups with multiple games over the course of 3 days. One in San Diego and one in Utah on back-to-back weekends in April.
Yeah, this coming weekend, San Diego visits Seattle and Oregon. They make their debut against San Francisco. So two teams playing their first games against teams that played this past weekend on the road. So the Falcons and Tempest get to host now. So that's the weekend slate.
Alrighty. So we're going to head over now to an interview with Kody Lippincott from the Arizona Sidewinders, who is making some posterizing skies all weekend long and has been one of the breakout stars in the Western Ultimate League. Stick around. It's Deep Look. Joining us now on Deep Look is cutter for the Arizona Sidewinders, Kody Lippincott. Kody, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. Super excited.
Well, we're very glad to have you on. Thanks for making time. It was an exciting start to the Western Ultimate League season out in Arizona. 3 days, 4 games, 3 games for your Sidewinders team. Mm-hmm. And, things kind of not going to expectations. A lot of buzz about Utah, but Arizona comes out and gets the early win. I guess first question, how would you assess the weekend overall? Both from an on-field perspective and maybe from just, having home games in the Western Ultimate League for the first time.
I'm going to answer your question in reverse order because I'm super excited to answer the second part of it. This weekend, this home opener, season opener was literally the culmination of nearly 2.5 years of work that I know that not only people on our team and within our original organizing committee put in, but all across the league. I mean, Lish with the board and the entire league. It's been a very long journey, COVID-ridden journey to get to this point. And it was so amazing to actually finally have games. I know, of course, we went to the Winter Cup back in December, but to have home games where we got to invite family and friends and our community out to see us was pretty amazing. So at least from that perspective, I was surprised that nothing major went wrong, which was awesome because of course, you do all the planning that you can and then day of everything seems to go in a different direction sometimes, but everything went great. I was super happy with the results of all of the, Ulti-World setup in terms of the live stream and the camera work. We got a lot of comments from folks in our community saying that was the best Frisbee that they had ever watched, which was pretty cool to hear. From an on-field perspective, I also thought that at least, for the Sidewinders, I think the preseason rankings had us at number 7. So it was really nice to come out of the weekend with a 2-1 record and, make a splash because we didn't really get to do that at Winter Cup. There wasn't a lot of planning ahead of time for Winter Cup, and we had very open lines at Winter Cup. It was really, for us, the intent was to take our 2020 roster to Winter Cup and give them the opportunity to play that they didn't get to have in 2020. So coming out of the weekend, this first opener weekend was really exciting to go in 2-1 for sure.
This obviously is, like you mentioned, you get to play the Winter Cup, but this is a bit of a different experience. It's the start of a longer season. What has the preparation been like for the Sidewinders? How frequently have y'all gotten to get together? What is the practice and the setup and all the prep? How much scouting are you getting to doing, even though there's no real film on teams? Like, what does that process look like right now?
Yeah, I know that at least from our coaching staff and our captains, preparation started months ago. We have had, prior to this past weekend, we had 3 full practice weekends, and they were pretty long, although, not all of the practice time, even though we were having people come in for an entire day on Saturday, an entire day on Sunday. There was a lot of team chemistry built into that too, which is something that I think we really needed. We had quite a few newer folks join our team. Of course, there was also a core that was here in Phoenix, here in Arizona, that stayed the same compared to our 2020 roster. But lots of new folks and lots of new folks who came in and played really big roles for our team too. We were super excited to get in a few more women from New Mexico, and Ari Nelson coming from Colorado, just like some really big presence coming in. And the team chemistry piece was super, super, super important to build for us. In terms of like gameplay and strategy, there was some basics, we went over some basic offense stuff, some basic defense stuff, but really it was like reps for sure going into the weekend.
What did you expect to see from your opponents? Like, does 2-1 feel like, oh, we knew we had that in us for sure? Or is it like, wow, we went 2-1?
That's a great question. First off, I was super impressed at the play from all three teams. For me personally, I knew that the San Francisco roster was pretty much going to be the team that we saw at Winter Cup. So prior to the weekend, we were watching a lot of film with focus on San Francisco. Wasn't really sure what to expect from Utah Wild. They put up an excellent game against us. And then I know we were warming up on Saturday morning when they were playing San Francisco, but heard about like their epic comeback in the second half. And I think that we're going to still see some really big things from Utah. Was really proud of us for, coming all out on Friday night and putting up a really good game against them. I think for Seattle specifically, they played pretty much to my personal expectations. I knew that they had also picked up, I think maybe 8-ish new folks who, some of which are powerhouses for sure. So I knew that we were going to see a really tough game against Seattle. They're also quite tall as a team, which we have some tall folks too, but that always puts in a different level of gameplay that you kind of have to plan for as well. So I think from Seattle, some expectations were met. And then, the other two, I'm not sure what to expect from San Francisco and Utah going forward, but I will say that the level of their play against us this weekend was still very, very high, despite the LW results.
You mentioned doing some of the kind of like the basic gameplay prep and stuff like that. You got a taste of it at the Winter Cup, but the format for this obviously is different, and it's even different across teams. Seattle's playing one game, you're playing 3 games in 3 days. What was that experience like, and what was it like interacting with, dealing with the quarter situation, end of quarter situations over and over again, or other rules that are specific to this Western Ultimate League experience?
Yeah, the rule set is something that is going to take some getting used to, even compared to the Winter Cup. And some of us also got an opportunity to play on the San Diego Wolfpack team 3 years ago at this point. And that used the AUDL rule set. So some of us had, apart from Winter Cup, had a little bit of experience with the quarter, timed quarter format. I was glad that the double team rule went away. But overall, I think that folks on our team adjusted really well. There are still some things like the pre-stall is a really good example. The pre-stall, anytime that the disc comes off a certain call, like a pick or I think a travel where the disc is thrown, it comes back in with a pre-stall and the observer counts down 4, 3, 2, 1. That's definitely going to take some getting used to. And I think it threw off some of our folks. And I think it also threw off some of our opponents that we were playing against. So overall, I thought we did a really good job of adjusting to the rule set and adjusting our strategy to the timed quarters, which is interesting. But I think it's still going to take some getting used to. The other thing that I would like to mention is that with us, the Sidewinders, playing 3 games versus like 1 or 2, I actually thought that played to our advantage a bit. I think that our first game on Friday there was a ton of excitement in the air. Of course, with it being the first home game, I think that created a sort of some frantic points in the beginning, especially, mostly just in the first quarter. But as we went through the second half of that game and as we went into Saturday and then into Sunday, I think we really were able to hit a stride. And it, at least for me personally, it didn't feel as taxing as like a full tournament weekend. I felt pretty good physically on Saturday or Sunday morning rather. So I thought that was good. It was a good observation for future seasons.
Yeah, it's interesting because it can be a more intense unit of play compared to like a tournament game, but it's still 3 versus 7 or 8 games in a regular tournament. So I'll be curious to see how that plays out and how the home and away balance plays out, because your home games are done, right? You don't have any other home games.
Exactly.
So now you got to go on the road for the rest of the season. Extra challenge.
I know. I'm excited. We've played in Southern California, a few times across not just the pro season with Winter Cup and San Diego Wolfpack, but also in club. A lot of us have been to SoCal many times. So hopefully the games against LA and San Diego won't have too much of a home court versus away team disadvantage.
Well, you've been one of the breakout stars between Winter Cup and this weekend. I mean, you're the person that's getting talked about, highlight clips, and you've made some spectacular plays. Let's actually just rewind to Winter Cup first. When you made the huge catch, and then it ends up getting on SportsCenter Top 10. I mean, that's a moment that a lot of Ultimate Frisbee players will never have. How did you react to that?
I told everyone that it was probably time for me to retire, but I'm really glad that I didn't, because this past weekend and the rest of the season is going to be really fun. Honestly, I was blown away. I had heard after the fact that the whole SportsCenter Top 10, like the tagging and things, most of that I think came from Twitter, which I am not very active on at all. So it was a huge surprise to see it. I randomly got a message from a friend who recorded his TV because he saw me on Top 10 while he was watching something else. And that was how I found out. And then of course it blew up, which I still really can't believe that happened. Hopefully there's a lot more of that to come. But yeah, I'm super, super grateful for the opportunity to have been on SportsCenter. That's very cool.
I think we're all kind of used to, toiling away in obscurity. You go out and you play these games, and even if you're playing at the highest level, you go out and win a gold medal or whatnot, and then you go to work on Monday and nobody knows. Right. And this is one of the rare times that you kind of break through. And did you have like people from outside of Ultimate, like who are just like, oh my gosh, I saw you on TV? Like, were you getting messages? Like, what was that like?
Yeah, a couple. I actually also, somebody had asked me how the weekend went when I was back at work the week after. And at first I didn't say anything about it. And then a few weeks later, someone was like, hey, I heard through the grapevine that you were, that this happened. And then I ended up sending the link out to my whole team and my manager and everybody. And it was like a huge thing at work, it felt really silly at the time, but everyone was like, this is so cool. So yeah, it was neat.
I mean, it was a sweet play. It totally deserved it. It was awesome.
Thank you.
How would you rate your performance this weekend, you personally?
I thought I played really well. I thought my best game was Seattle, which is funny because of the score. But I had some really great catches in traffic. And I felt, again, just like getting the jitters out after the Friday evening game, I felt like I really hit a stride in terms of not just, cutting and playing offense, but I also played a few D-line points that game and felt really, really good. Yeah. So hopefully that'll continue the rest of the season.
You have a really like explosive play style. You mentioned making some grabs in traffic. I can think of a specific guy from that Seattle game that was a great play for a score. Now what's your athletic background prior to Ultimate? What did you play? And then how did you get into Ultimate from there?
Yeah, great question. I have to give a shout out to my dad because he played Ultimate Frisbee for many years. He started playing, I think, back in college in Nebraska. Um, it's funny that I start with this story, though, because he tried to, well, he didn't try. He did sign me up for an Ultimate Frisbee League when I was 16. And I was his baggage and I didn't know how to throw. I was very bad. The only thing I could do was run to the end zone and then maybe catch it. So I actually didn't really like Ultimate Frisbee until after college. But other than that, when growing up, I played soccer. I did gymnastics. I was on the dive team for a while. I ran cross country and track. And then in college, I was on the crew team, like the rowing team. So lots of different things throughout my background, all leading to Ultimate Frisbee, the league season after I graduated from undergrad, which is pretty funny. So, but I think probably mostly track and cross country, and then soccer, of course, has similar cutting patterns, crossover with Ultimate.
Who was the MVP for Arizona this weekend?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I will probably say Megan Maxfield because first off, her D on Sunday. I don't know if you have seen the highlight reel or the stream, but
I cut the replays in the production booth. So.
It was literally unreal. I couldn't believe chest high, full extension, no contact layout for the D was about the most athletic thing I have ever seen. So I definitely had to
poach off the back too.
Yes, exactly.
Read the play.
And yeah, what an absolute insane moment for her. But all weekend, she's a very, very solid player. And of course, she's one of our powerhouse pickups on defense. She has great positioning. She's very athletic and she has great throws as well. She's a great all around athlete and player for our team. So I think I would have to give it to her.
This is the kind of insight you're gonna get because I'm over here oh yeah, let's get to the Lindsay Doyle talks, and she put up all these big numbers for my fantasy team. Yes, I get to flex my
Just
fantasy
look at the
team.
Stats, scores on scores.
Yeah, tons of points. Okay, I said this on Twitter. Your team is very fast. Maybe I'm imagining things, but it seems like the team's really fast. Who's the fastest Sidewinder?
Definitely Meredith Bile. She came out so yet another, I'm going to keep saying this over and over, but yet another powerhouse that we've picked up. She came out to our combine tryout back in the winter, and she placed first in every single combine test. Yeah, 40-yard dash, broad jump, everything. And you can watch film of her back from the club season or from this past weekend, and she is insanely fast. She can outrun anyone, I would say. And she puts in a lot of work to get there too. So shout out to her.
All right. So how does Arizona need to improve to be able to, if you see Seattle again, let's say, turn that one around?
Yeah. Hopefully we get a chance this season to see Seattle at the end of the season. I think one of the biggest things is increasing the different looks that we have on defense. I think that obviously each team runs their own version of offense, and now we have a lot of good film to go and do some research on Seattle. But their offense is just very solid. They're a team that does an absolutely excellent job of isolating their cutters in space, but also having just kind of a general flow that allows them to make cuts into spaces where our defense wasn't expecting. And I think that we started to realize that in the second half, which the second half point to point wise, I think was a lot better than the first half. I would have to look back, but so we started to make some adjustments there, but it's going to be, I think that's one of the biggest things is just understanding what we can do on defense to do better at containing and anticipating cuts that maybe other teams wouldn't necessarily make, or maybe cuts that our team wouldn't necessarily make. So just better anticipation there.
All right. Well, Kody, thank you so much for stopping by and talk with us. 2-1 is a good place to be with a 6-game season.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Agreed.
San Francisco, right, sitting at 0-2, it's like, yikes, probably got to win out if you want to make the playoffs. So it's going to be exciting. What record do you, obviously you want to win all of your games, but what do you think it's going to take to get into championship weekend record-wise?
That's a great question. I was trying to do some mental math this last couple of days just to try to figure out, if we win here and lose there and there. I think it's kind of a toss-up because it's going to depend how the other teams do against each other, right?
Sure.
So, I think to feel comfortable at the point where they, do all the decision making for which 4 teams go into the championship weekend, I think we're going to need a couple more wins for sure. So, I don't know. Maybe if we can win 2 out of our last 3 games, I think that would put us in a really good spot. Of course, it would be awesome, and we're always striving to win all of our games. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, it'll be fun. I think 5-1, you're safe.
I think 4 wins is going to get you
tiebreakers, right?
No, I think 4 wins will probably get you in. I'm betting that 1 to 2 3-win teams will make it, depending on how many 3-win teams. If there's a big group in the middle, then you could see 2. But I think you're going to see somebody get tie broken with 3 wins. So a point diff it could come into a big factor. I think 4 is going to secure it for it. I think unless we see like a 6-0 team and a 5-1 team, I think 4 is going to be pretty safe.
Yep. I think so
All
too.
Right. See. Well, best of luck the rest of the way. We'll see you out there in San Diego. And thank you for stopping by.
Yeah. Thank you both again for the opportunity to come on and chat a bit.
Kody Lippincott from the Arizona Sidewinders with us here on Deep Look. We will be right back. Welcome back to Deep Look. Before we take a look at this weekend's upcoming college tournaments, quickly, Keith, one other little note from this weekend. There's been some discussion on social media and in the UltiWorld Discord, where you can join as a Fuller Plus subscriber, ultiworld.com/subscribe, about some dangerous plays from the Western Ultimate League weekend. Definitely some pretty heavy contact plays where people had to take an injury, come off the field. There were multiple yellow cards given, I believe 3, for pretty heavy contact. Just wanted to get your thoughts on it, Keith. I am not used to seeing this kind of frequency of dangerous plays particularly in the women's game. So is there something about the Western Ultimate League, sort of showcase format that's setting this up? And do we need to do something about it?
Kira Kruznikova posted on Twitter, a player for the Utah Wild, some of her thoughts about this, saying that looking back at play, her team was on both sides of these in some cases, that there was amount of contact that felt unsafe and that it was on the responsibility of the players to represent their communities and inspire people to play and do better. Even saying that she had heard from people who said they were afraid to play because they didn't want to get hurt, which that's a pretty stark picture to paint. We talked a little about this in the Discord, and I said that I don't exactly see what would cause this sharp uptick to feel like it is a part of the system here, like something that needs to be addressed by the league. So much as just, energy, nerves. There was another person who mentioned that the shorter stall count could be part of it because you have less time to make decisions. Plays are happening faster. So you don't have a chance players are not used to operating in that window to make their decisions, to assess the field, to assess safety. So I think that could be part of it. But I'm hoping that this is just a blip on the radar because I don't really see any other reasons that it would be a situation where play had increased markedly in the level of dangerous plays that we see.
A lot of the situations that came up, not all, but many, were players coming at the disc from, different angles and maybe not having eyes on each other and colliding at the disc. It's a common situation for heavy contact to happen. And there were times when it was reckless play, particularly from the defender who was coming into a space where they knew an offensive cutter was likely going to be coming, and they just went full force into it. And there were yellow cards that were given that were generally, I thought, appropriate yellow cards. The issue, Keith, is that yellow cards do nothing. They mean nothing. They continue to mean nothing. And I think we're way past the point of giving cards actual teeth. And I think that the Western Ultimate League doesn't need to be beholden to the history of USAU not doing anything to punish players for infractions, and can actually implement a system that creates an actual punishment for making a bad bid. What that is, I think, is open to interpretation. Some discussions in the Discord that I thought were interesting were having the player who committed the infraction have to come off the field and perhaps not play for a select number of additional points. That could also include making the team whose player received a yellow card have to play down a player like you would see in a foul in the NHL, penalty box type situation. And that could perhaps last until the end of the point, making them play down 7-6 in terms of players. I think those are really interesting ideas that would feel like a middle ground between basically doing nothing, which is the current status quo, and doing things that are a lot more punitive, like ejecting a player. Because I don't think I saw a play that was ejection worthy this whole weekend. To get ejected from a game, you really need to do something that is not only dangerous, but also, clearly like targeting or malicious in some way, or just so reckless as to be, completely irresponsible to the point of, saying you have to get out of this game. Like what you did, like when that dude layout, tried to make the upline layout D, but just like literally dove through the back of the guy in the AUDL a few years ago. Those kinds of plays, sure, eject. But I didn't see that this weekend. I would like to see some kind of enforcement mechanism. This goes for club as well, that if you get a yellow card or you get a PMF, that there is an actual punishment implemented immediately for that play, along with the chance that if you get another one, you get ejected, similar to what they do in soccer. As it stands right now, I just don't think there's enough teeth for these kinds of bad plays, and there's not really any reason there's nothing discouraging them besides feeling bad about the fact that you maybe injured another player.
Another tool in the toolkit could be tracking teams and players' history of this, so that you get a fuller picture. Why not have a stat for number of times that players received yellow cards, and you can even specify the reason if you want. I mean, it's easy enough to codify that into the assignment of a card, card, physical play or dangerous play or whatever, and then that goes in the book for you.
Maybe if you get 2 over the course of the season, you miss the next game.
Right. If you start piling them up, you miss the next game. Or if your team has too many, there's a team penalty. You don't gain possession of the disc to start the game, or something like that. You have to play down a player. You can kind of intersect those rules. I think there's ways to pull the levers here in a way that disincentivizes play. I know there's some concern, and I saw this also in our Discord conversation, that by commodifying, by putting into the rules what the cost of making a dangerous play is, it'll allow players to assess whether or not they want to make a dangerous play and pay that cost. And we've seen the psychological effects of that can cause an increase in dangerous plays in some situations. But I think that combined with the kind of social policing that we're doing now should be enough to wear off any of those potential effects.
I don't buy the argument. I understand the argument in some situations where there's a sort of transactional cost of fouling or something. But then, okay, increase the punishment to the point where that goes away. / I don't think anybody's going out onto the field intentionally trying to commit yellow card worthy infractions. I just don't think that that's part of the calculus of any player, even the dirtiest players in the game. I think the problem is that the status quo is including a number of dangerous plays that we don't want to see because it's dangerous and people get hurt and they're ugly fouls. And right now there's absolutely no repercussions for ever doing that. I mean, how often do you see even yardage penalties enforced in USAU games? It's extremely rare. So I just think that, by worrying about some hypothetical future, we're ignoring the actual reality of dangerous plays happening on a regular basis.
Agreed.
So anyway, let's talk about some college ultimate. Let us know your thoughts, by the way. deeplook@ultworld.com, @deeplookpod on Twitter. We always look forward to hearing from you. How could the card system be evolved to, find ways to make these kinds of plays more discouraged?
I did see one ejection-worthy play. It was Carleton going horns down.
Get him out of here. Throw him out of the division. All right, let's turn our attention to the college division. Women's Centex, men's Centex, and men's Missouri Loves Company on the docket this weekend. Let's start with women's Centex, Keith. Pretty stacked field as usual.
It's great to see this annual right. Hopefully everything goes well. We've obviously heard the stories of Centex Pass, but we're getting some of the connectivity that we would crave in a regular season. And at the top two seeds at this tournament, Texas and Tufts, we just saw them play twice at Stanford Invite. Tufts gets the better of those, so I think they're going to be the favorite at this tournament. But we get, hopefully, fingers crossed, the debut of Northeastern. Their previous debut was spoiled by bad weather and travel issues. Dartmouth as well. Pittsburgh's also in this field with Michigan, Chicago, Florida State filling out the rest of the top part of the tier one at women's Centex.
Who you got? Let's make our picks right now.
I like Tufts. I don't see any reason to back down from them. I'm wondering about Northeastern, Pittsburgh, Texas. I think it's hard to pick which one of those is probably the second best team. I like Northeastern in theory, but I would like to see them play more. Like, I'd like to see them get on the field. I'm worried about a team, getting its first outing. And man, I feel like I've been burned by Pittsburgh recently, and that makes me hesitant to take them. I think I'm going to take Pittsburgh. I'm going to take Tufts over Pittsburgh in the final. I'm not super confident about that second part, though.
Well, so interestingly, the current bracket has pool winners of A and B, which would be the 1 and 2 seeds, meeting in semifinals. Which is not a traditional bracket. Now, perhaps this will be changed, or it's just a mistake. But as it is written, you would have Tufts and Texas playing in semis, assuming everything goes to seed, and Pittsburgh and Northeastern playing in semis, assuming everything goes to seed. I think I'm going to take Northeastern, given this situation, assuming this is how it plays out. I'm going to take Northeastern and Tufts to make the final, with Tufts getting the win. If in fact Northeastern and Tufts play in semis, as would be in a traditional bracket, well, then I think Tufts is going to get that win, and you're going to have Texas make the final. So I'm going to kind of hedge my bets there, depending on how they actually run the bracket. As it's written, I'm taking Northeastern and Tufts, with Tufts getting a comfortable win. Okay, let's move on. Really quick, let's just talk men's Centex. Not nearly the strength that we've typically seen from this tournament. A lot of the top teams going to Missouri Loves Company, which we'll talk about in just a moment. Texas is your 1 seed. Florida is your 2 seed. And then you get to Tulane, UCSB, Iowa State, Iowa, Texas A&M, and LSU. So, it's a regional quality tournament. Only 2 top 25 teams, though. Are you going to deviate from Texas and Florida in the final, Keith?
I don't think so. Tulane, maybe the road trip to California was just too much, the travel, but too disappointing of an opening for me to feel good about taking them here. I'm going to take Texas comfortably, and Florida also in the final.
Same here. Texas over Florida in the final. A classic matchup at Centex. So we go to Missouri Loves Company, typically a tournament that happens in the fall, but it's happening in the spring this season, and it's got a pretty good field. BYU is going to be there. They're the number 1 seed. Minnesota, Vermont, Northeastern, Michigan, Carleton, Wisconsin, Illinois are your top 8 seeds. So obviously BYU will only be playing on Saturday. Their schedule is against Carleton, Wisconsin, Vermont, and then they will play 2 power pool games as well. So it says, does that make sense? I guess so, yeah. So they got 5 games in one day. So they're playing a game on Friday night. Pardon me.
There you go.
Playing Carleton on Friday night and then 4 games on Saturday. So should be an interesting weekend to see what BYU can do. As for the rest of the tournament, Keith, certainly some interesting teams in the field. You know, can Minnesota go out and get their first tournament win of the season? I mean, they will be the favorite as the top seed behind BYU. But they've got to get through some pretty darn good competition. We're going to get our first look at Wisconsin. They have to start out by taking on Michigan in pool play, which will not be an easy game.
Who's the team you're most interested to see in this field?
Vermont.
Me too. You want to see if they can back it up, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I like the talent, but I just need to see it played out over longer, especially for a team that hasn't really proven it over the years. Okay, I'm going to call my shot here. Michigan upsets Minnesota in pool play.
Play. Wow.
Yeah, I'm feeling it. I don't know. I'm just feeling the Michigan energy at this moment, even though I picked against them in the men's March Madness bracket. But yeah, I'm very curious to see Vermont. Carleton's a perfectly reasonable test for them, but you'll want to see how they perform over the weekend. And then, like you mentioned, that Wisconsin debut, where are they going to be? I feel like we didn't really get a great sense of where they were at in Norco. And I think that they were kind of focused on 2022. So there could be a chance that this is an emergent program that's going to be on the rise right here. And maybe at a good time with Carleton taking a step back. Could open up some opportunities in North Central.
Vermont's got Indiana, BYU, Carleton to start their tournament. And then I think they get a power pool game as well. So I'm pretty curious about this Vermont team because their calling card right now is a couple of very early season wins. First tournament of the year against NC State. And who else did they beat at Queen City? They had one, Ohio State. And then otherwise, you know, they've passed the tests. You know, they lost 14-7 to UNC. But otherwise, they've won all their games. They've mostly won them convincingly outside of a 15-14 win over UNC Charlotte. Not a bad team. They crushed Duke 15-7. Strong result. So now they have to go up against a level of competition across the weekend that's going to be a bit higher than we saw them have to face at Queen City in Eastern qualifier. So I'm very curious to see what they can do over the course of the weekend. I think making the final would be very impressive. Obviously, if they win the tournament, that would be great. But I think that's too high of an expectation for a team that's just kind of starting to knock on the door of nationals. And by the way,
I agree. I do think that they have the potential here to be in the semifinals. But it's a really high bar to set, especially given how little we've seen from them. You know, it was a while ago that they beat these teams at Queen City tune-up, and it was just one tournament, and none of those teams were even like, aside from UNC, are like incredible teams. You know,
tricky situation for Vermont. It looks like the Northeast, the New England region, is probably only going to get 2 bids in the men's division for nationals because even though there's tons of schools in the New England region, a lot of them are D3 and those schools do not count towards your D1 size bid. So based on what we saw the last time we had size bids, New England's not going to get one. And that could mean only 2 bids. There's going to be at least 2 teams that are very strong nationals capable teams not going to nationals out of New England. Vermont may be one of them, but let's see what they can do this weekend.
Should have won more 2 and 3 years ago. No excuses.
Maybe you should have built some universities.
Yeah.
You guys control your own destiny. Built some.
You had the time.
What were you doing during COVID? You just at home baking bread, huh? Why don't you build some universities?
Recruit. Go to other schools. Recruit some people. You know.
All right, so picks. Let's do it. I'm gonna go. So they have a normal bracket. There's just so many power pool games.
But yeah, you got to go through power pool translation first.
I'm just gonna make the normal call here. I'm taking Minnesota and Michigan in the final.
Dang it!
Minnesota to win.
I'm also taking Minnesota and Michigan in the final. Maybe that makes me want to revise. I know I want to get Michigan. They're going to go 1-1. They're going to split against each other and then meet in the final. But which one do I want Michigan to take the win in? I think I'm going to go the same way as you. I think I'm going to take Michigan in the final, but Minnesota gets the win in pool play. Okay. Or sorry, other way around. Minnesota gets the win in the final. Michigan gets the win in pool play.
Okay, got it. All right, so we'll see what happens. And again, as I said, Wisconsin making their debut. So what does this team look like? I mean, they literally have not played a tournament yet. They're at the back end of the top 25, but they could certainly make a big move up or down depending on what happens in Columbia, Missouri. That is going to do it for our program today, but we would love for you to join us in our subscriber bonus segment where we take the top 16 teams in both the men's and women's college power rankings and put them into a bracket and pick a bracket and make our picks to who's going to take down the March Madness college mini tournament. It's like the NBA's like mid-season tournament that's been rumored. We're going to stop in the middle of the season. We're going to have a 16-team tournament before nationals. It makes no sense, but we're going to do it anyway. So join us for that. Who's going to take home the W in our March Madness brackets? Become a subscriber at ultiworld.com/subscribe. It's less than $4 a month to get Deep Look bonus segments. For Keith Raynor, I'm Charlie Eisenhood saying so long. We'll talk to you next week right here on Deep Look.